Hello, and welcome to the Wizard's Respite Sanctorum, the show that dives into all things TTRPG. Today we're going to be diving into a little bit of Dungeons and Dragons, a little bit of Wizards of the Coast, a little bit of what people are doing with the changes that are happening to the industry, to the hobby, and what the future might hold for RPGs in general. But as always, I am not alone. I'm here with my co-host, Zachariah, Old Man Gaming. Zach, how are you doing?
Hi, everybody. Nice to be here. Always love to trash Wizards of the Coast and D&D. So literally leapt at the possibility. Just want to point out, though, me and Wiz wearing the shirts today. I got the critical failure shirt on. Please keep in mind, one, I'm having this kind of day. And then Wiz has the Bring It 20 shirt on. It's looking good.
Wearing our RPG swag today.
1 to 20. We should make a third shirt that's like a 10, and it just says "eh."
Yeah, that's actually pretty good. I'm gonna have to keep that one in mind. It's okay. We're good. It's fine. It's fine.
Yeah. So Wizards of the Coast.
Yeah. So Wizards of the Coast. Oh, Wizards of the Coast. As I think most people, even if they're not into D&D 5e, understand that Dungeons and Dragons today is still the monolith in the hobby. It's the name brand that people who are not in the hobby can only associate with tabletop role-playing games. But it's been taking some heat, man, over the last couple of years. They've been kind of making all kinds of goofs and, straight up screw-ups. As far as a brand, as far as a product, as far as a company decisions, how they treat their fan base. And I posted something about their latest move. It kind of popped off on Twitter, and I got a lot of feedback, and I kind of wanted to chat about it. And that was, the new product that's coming out, which nobody even knows what to call it. Unfortunately, is it a new edition? Not really. Is it an expansion? It's kind of like Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition 1.2, 1.5. It's like halfway a new product, but they're rolling it out. It's finally coming out after so many delays, and they're dropping a bunch of digital products as little bonuses to pre-order it. Wasn't a big fan of that myself, and I was posting, if you aren't a big fan of that either, what are you switching to if you're going to switch? If you're not really interested in these moves that WotC is rolling out, what are you going to switch up to? And we got that just exploded. Everybody had a lot of comments about that. Before we jump into those comments, though, Zach, you and I chatted briefly about this, and yeah, like when it comes to this pre-order, they're releasing it soon, but they're trying to get money for the release, I guess before the release for this pre-order, and all of the bonuses that they are providing for this pre-order are digital skins for your digital VTT that can only be played on Dungeons and Dragons Beyond. You mentioned that this was kind of something that you see in the video game world quite a bit. What are your thoughts about that? What have you seen in the video game side of doing these sort of pre-orders, these skins, all of the little like extra bundles that they're shooting out?
I mean, you're not going to like where it's going because pre-orders is a huge problem for me in the video game world. I don't know how much crossover there is between our audience here and my audience on the Horrible Gaming podcast, but which is our video game podcast. but I hate pre-orders. I hate the concept of pre-orders. The reason pre-orders are around is because people don't have in video games, they don't have enough money to finish the game. So they take your money so that they can show investors, oh, look at how many people have already pre-ordered this game, and then investors give them more money, that sort of thing. Because video games is such a huge, astronomical amount of money sort of company, like not company, but industry, that they're constantly kind of like on the edge of failure. One of the things I hate about video games is pre-orders now. Every game has pre-orders. Every game has pre-order like advantages, and to the point where they actually give early access to certain people if they pay a higher price point. You'll get like 3 days. You get to play 3 days ahead of everybody else. But what's even worse is the pre-orders. They start the pre-orders sometimes nearly a year before the game is out, which is insane. Absolutely insane. Games have gotten canceled, and they've had to like find ways to give the money back and stuff like that. It's an absolute fiasco because the whole idea of pre-orders sets up this like idea of like you're buying the game without knowing what the game is like, you know,
Right.
and that's a huge problem. It definitely looks like D&D is moving in a video game kind of direction. We've been talking about that on the show quite a bit, and just like watching what they have been doing over the course of the last couple of years is just to me, very video gamey. Like they've digitalized everything. They've created a subscription fee for that thing. They've put everything. They've almost made your print media into DLC for the. I mean, really, the product here that they're trying to get you on is D&D Beyond. That's what they're trying to do, from what I understand of the situation. Which means that these books now have pre-order DLC for your Beyond, and it's kind of real murky, dumb waters, in my opinion. I don't think all pre-orders are terrible. There are pre-order systems that make sense, such as Kickstarter, or Kickstarter. Oh, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I never say it right because I used to drink the Mountain Dew Kickstart, and I can never remember which one's which. But that's not necessarily bad. I mean, there's definitely been some problems with that, but overall, they kind of have to show you proof of concept, and then you're giving them money ahead of time and getting some kind of like some pre-order bonuses with it. I think that is a much more honest way of doing things than how a lot of these companies do it themselves. And yeah, so now you're seeing this thing where it's like, you have to sign on to this thing without ever knowing if this thing is a lie or not. You know?
Yeah, yeah. And like you said, we had been talking about this sort of becoming more video game-like in so many different ways. They just hired another executive over at WotC that is straight out of one of the big video game production companies. I think it was like Blizzard or something like that.
Yeah.
Obviously, they're doing that because they're wanting to make this a video game. They're wanting to make it more video game-like, and they want to get that video game business model installed in the Dungeons and Dragons product. And all of these digital products that they're providing are lined out for their virtual tabletop that can only be played on D&D Beyond. I don't like the idea of virtual products for this genre, this game hobby. I don't think that it provides a lot of value to the customer, which is one of the. I mean, if this is what they want to do, this isn't as bad as them like eliminating the OGL back like they did a few months ago,
or that weird bout of reverse racism they participated in.
Yeah, they've done worse things.
They've done definitely worse things. I think if you don't mind me cutting in for just a second, the other big issue with video games, and one of the big issues I have with pre-orders, is the return policy is shit on video games. Basically, with video games, you can only really return a game if you've only played it for 2 hours digitally, which is insane because most of these games are like epic 60-hour things that like the first cutscene lasts 2 hours. So it's so easy to screw that up. So what they do is they get you with that pre-order, and then you can't give it back. And I think that that is a huge similarity between that and this as well, because how are you going to return a book? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like they're not going to take it for the price you got it for, you know. And
Yeah.
you can't return any of these digital things, you know.
Yeah, exactly. How I mean, like, how can you prove that you didn't like
Mm-hmm.
copy the digital? It's so easy to be able to
Yep.
copy like a digital skin off of
Yeah.
something, off of your computer, particularly. Um, and we've been the VTT hasn't come out yet. I'm not really expecting it to look great. I'm not expecting it to be a great product. Um, because the last several products that Wizards of the Coast has dropped haven't been great. They haven't been producing quality content. I got Spelljammers. It was a
Uh-huh.
big release. I was super excited about it. Like a science fantasy world. It was kind of garbage, man. Like I'm going back to the original AD&D Spelljammers and converting it over for fifth edition because it was lacking so much content. It was so small, and I'm not really seeing them put energy into quality.
Yeah.
And
Well, and if
this
that had sold really well, they'll sell the other content you're missing to you in chunks.
right. That's
Which
right.
is
Microtransactions.
macrotransactions. Like this is what Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro is doing right now. They're turning D&D. They're using D&D as a model, like they're using video games. So you're seeing microtransactions, subscription fees. You're seeing pre-orders and pre-order bonuses. You're seeing a lack of ways to give your product back to the people who sold it to you. That's what they're doing. That they're turning this into video games. I think what's interesting here, though, the interesting thing for me is that video games as an industry is like this. I mean, you have your indie games, which are bastions of sanity, sometimes, most of the time, but all the AAA game studios do this. Like every one of them, they're all concerned with games as service and subscription fees and microtransactions and all of it. Like all your big AAA studios, the games you see advertised on TV, those are all like participating in this stuff in some way, shape, or form. D&D is the only one who's doing this that I've seen in the industry. Like I don't know of any other major, like, and if I'm wrong, please let me know because I am more ignorant on the TTRPG front. But I haven't noticed like White Wolf or anybody else like we've got an online thing and there's a subscription fee and yada yada yada. Like D&D is the only people doing this. So now is the time as fans, as players to say no to this because I am in the video gaming world, and that video gaming world, it's almost too late to say no. There's too many people. There's like the whole industry's like this. Saying no to it would be like you don't play video games. Like this is the time to say no to it in the RPG company. Move to another game. Say no to it if you do not like this practice because otherwise. And this is a big thing we always say in video games. Them doing something the first time is asking you for permission. And the minute you participate in that, every other company sees it and goes, oh, they're okay with that. Let's do that too. So,
Yeah.
and TTRPGs is a little bit different than video games. They don't make nearly as much. They're not even in the ballpark financially. So with video games, you have very big corporate money entities that are thinking about overheads and costs. I think that there is a lot less of that in the TTRPG community, even with the bigger name guys. That being said, they're still in there to try and make money, okay? They're still trying to make money, and when you show them that this thing can make money, they will switch to that thing. And then all of a sudden, we're 10 years in and everybody has a subscription fee, everybody has an online service, everybody has like sells you their games in chunks. This is not something you want to deal with.
Yeah, and I don't think it's gonna work ultimately for that reason. I don't think that for an RPG player, a TTRPG player, these digital platforms and these digital skins and these digital dice and all of this other stuff is really going to provide a product that they want. I don't think you're selling it to the right audience.
Right.
And I don't think that the video game business model is going to transfer to TTRPGs. I think that the product that people want with TTRPGs are human interaction in an imaginative world where they create a story with their friends. That's what these games are all about. And Wizards of the Coast, their products aren't facilitating that environment. They're not making that more fun. They're not making that more easy or accessible in any realistic way with any of these products. I think I know you're not a big map guy. I like using virtual tabletop maps. I like using maps, depending on the situation for battle maps. So I don't think that these systems that they're installing is going to provide a lot of value to the TTRPG community, to those who play this game, these systems. I am a big fan of maps. I like maps. Their VTT does kind of look cool, at least from a sort of trailer sort of point of view. I doubt it's going to be as streamlined as they're saying it's going to be, just because they haven't been really producing great product. But I'm still going to use Owlbear Rodeo. I don't like D&D Beyond because it's too much of a bloated system. I use other systems that's much more streamlined, much more efficient as a DM, as a GM. And that's why I use Goblin's Notebook and Owlbear Rodeo. And I'm going to continue to use those products because they're better for my hobby, TTRPG. And I don't think Wizards of the Coast are going to be creating anything that's better for my hobby. I think they're trying to funnel us in to a new hobby. And some people are going to go for it, but I think the majority of people who like RPGs for what it provides their life, for the things that make RPGs, TTRPGs, that game genre, that hobby, I think they're going to move somewhere else. I think they're going to do something else.
I think one of the biggest problems I have here, and it's hard. I'm put back in the place I tend to be, and I'm sorry you guys are hearing clipping. My dog has decided it's playtime down here. Will not stop making noise. No, go away. But what I'm trying to say is, like, I tending to be a little bit more negative in this kind of area. And D&D, unfortunately, is the onboarding for RPGs. If you're out there and you're like, oh, I want to play role-playing games, the role-playing game you're going to try is D&D. It is unfortunate, and I have said this many times on the channel, because D&D is not the best game for first-time players. It's not even in the ballpark of the best game for first-time players. It does not teach players what they should be learning for role-playing games, which is the role-playing part, what the essence of role-playing is. Instead, it teaches you numbers and how to use those numbers to make bigger numbers, which is like a video game thing. I tend to be more negative in these sorts of situations, mainly because I've watched it happen so many times in video games. And the biggest problem with the TTRPG industry, as I was just talking about, was it's the onboarding. People see Critical Role, people hear about role-playing games, they immediately think of Dungeons & Dragons. To the point where the other day when I was pulled over by a cop for a taillight being out, he asked me where I was. I said playing role-playing games. He looked at me funny, and then I said I was playing Dungeons & Dragons with my friends, and then he understood. Like, Dungeons & Dragons isn't just like a game. It's not just a member of the industry. In a lot of ways, it is the industry, and that is the unfortunate reality of it. I think that, like, D&D, like, people walking in the door of the tabletop RPG building are going to think they need to be on D&D Beyond right off the bat. That is one of the biggest problems here. And I mean, with video games, they're all doing it to you, but like you go into video games, there's tons of different video games to pick from. You're not immediately going to be like, oh, this is the one that I start with. With D&D, it's the first thing you think of if you're trying to think of playing role playing games, which is again super unfortunate. I don't think D&D. I'm not a huge D&D fan, but all that aside, it shouldn't be the first thing a person plays. It just shouldn't, in my opinion. So I think that like that is a problem with whether or not this works, because I think that D&D lives a little bit more on its social media presence than necessarily than necessarily the quality of its product. D&D is the synonymous one. It's the one that, oh my god. Okay, so as I was saying, I think one of the biggest problems here is like it lives and dies a little bit more on its social media, its platform. It is the thing people see other celebrities like taking pictures with it, and just got my new book, that kind of thing. People getting into TTRPGs as a fad are going to go to D&D, unfortunately, and that's something that scares me for it working.
I do. You make a really good point, and it is an unfortunate point. They have Hasbro money to promote that angle.
I got the one on today. I'm the negative one.
I'll try to be the 20 then. Let's look at maybe some happy possibilities that may end up from this. Just from like a tactical point of view, you do make a lot, like there are some pretty heavy hitting obstacles to get through for the hobby at large, because they're so big. I think they have, Critical Role has been a major part of the enormous popularity boost in the last 10 to it's almost 15 years now. That D&D 5th edition came out and has really brought a lot of eyes on Dungeons and Dragons and the TTRPG hobby at large. They're not the only big guys, but they are the big guy.
And the big guy, yeah.
And but like they the Critical Role folk have their own game on. I haven't actually read it quite yet, so I can't really speak of the quality of that book in and of itself. I think it was a Daggerheart.
I have no idea. I
don't
follow them. I know.
What's that?
I know, blasphemous, but I do not follow Critical Role.
Yeah, that's another podcast.
Well, I think we actually talked about it on our podcast episode. I think Matt Mercer's a cool person. I think all of them are cool people. I just I don't like D&D for starters, and I think Matt Mercer tends to I don't want to get Matt Mercer hate, but I think he tends to railroad a little bit.
Sure.
He has a narrative. That's the other thing too. With Critical Role, people watch that and they're like, "Oh, look at the coolness that's happening," and I'm like, "Yeah, there's editing going on here." Because I've been at a table, it never works that straight. Everything that happens at that table is look at that, and then look at that, and then look at that, and it's did you guys rehearse what was going to happen beforehand a little bit? I feel like you did. And I don't love, I've been at 1,000 tables in my life. I have never had action hit the way that they hit their action, or even storyline and drama beats. Sometimes they're delivering lines
right.
You're this good at improv. I just don't buy that there isn't some editing going on, and I'm not upset about that. Edit, that's fine. It's just there are a lot of people who watch that and go, "This is role playing games," and I'm like, no, it isn't. No, it isn't.
Yeah, and one of the tricks that need to be kind of overcome by I don't even know who can really overcome that challenge. And I don't think that D&D is going to be the place where this really gets fleshed out in an effective way. But it's really I don't think people realize that those sort of story beats, those really cool high energy action moments, They do, happen
Yeah.
at
Oh yeah.
game tables. They're
Yeah.
organic. They don't
Hmm.
happen very often. They're not constant, and that's what makes them so special.
Yeah.
Is when you have a memory of that epic moment that has happened at your game table. It is that one shining moment in your memory of that craziness, and then there's a whole bunch of other stuff where your friends are just sort of screwing around or having fun or
Right.
doing something,
Right.
that's not as epic or critical or magnificent.
The garage game that I play at is a miracle when anything gets accomplished. Like, I mean, I think a lot of people just go a lot of people just want to like the idea of role playing is to pretend to be somebody else. Like that's it. Like that's the core of it. And then everything else is rules to allow you to do that. You know?
Right.
And sometimes it's nice to just imagine my character sipping tea on the back porch. He doesn't have to be like doing 37 kickflips to like, you know,
Yeah.
survive. Plus if you're role playing really good, you don't want your character constantly embroiled in combat because that's sad. That's a depressing life. Sometimes I want my character to just, you know, have a social life or something. I think it gives more reality to the fact that you're playing a character instead of just, you know, fight. You know, I'm not saying that I never want to fight. I mean, depending on the game, I'd be all right with that. But I'm not saying that I never want action. It just doesn't
There's a
happen that way.
balance.
Yeah, there's a lot of one of the problems I have with TTRPGs and the way your average person comes about seeing it is just so much disinformation. You know,
Right.
there's so much like, and not disinformation in a political way. I mean like disinformation like you just don't get what you think you're gonna get when you get into it. You know what I mean? Like if you are a bunch of people coming into role playing games for the first time, you think you gotta play D&D. You think it's all gonna be cool, epic stuff. You know, like it's just not like that. That's just not what it is. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, I do. And the other thing that I think needs to kind of be moved away from that mindset is, how much the players really actually make that kind of stuff happen.
Yeah.
The GM is only playing one part of this equation,
Yeah.
and it doesn't. They will provide a scenario and they will play off of you, but you got to really give them opportunities and give your other players. Everybody's there to help each other. It's collaborative.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't walk in even knowing that. They have no concept of that framework of, working with your
Right.
GM in the moment, working with
Right.
the other players in the moment.
Right.
Some of my favorite moments in some of the games I played with you was me and Phil just ripping off of each other.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
Because that's fun. And he's another player. It's not, and I mean, we've had great moments too where you're the GM, but it's not just me and you
No.
making it. And it's not
No.
just you making a moment.
No.
It's all of us together.
Yes, everybody trying to play a character, and I think that is the core essence of it. I think I've always said D&D kind of like loses that message somewhere in
Yeah.
the stats and rolls and everything. You know, it just loses it. It gets lost in it, and I don't even necessarily think D&D. Oh my God, this dog! I don't even think that D&D is a bad game. I just don't think it's the way that TTRPGs should be advertised to people who have never played it. I don't think that's what you should be seeing. I don't think Critical Role should be the first, actual play podcast you listen to. I don't think it.
And I think that the moves that Wizards is doing is sort of doubling down on that, on with this VTT and all of this digital stuff that they're trying to throw in, is doubling down on the not the player, not the game, not the role playing, but the numbers. And I'm not having it. And I don't think the internet is having it.
No, I don't think
And so maybe we should jump over to some of the responses that we got to this
Sure.
very lighthearted comment.
Yeah, let's do it.
So, I read through a bunch of them, and like I was telling you before we got on here, this is probably one of the biggest responses I've ever gotten on Twitter. I've gotten some pretty decent trends on a bunch of stuff, but this one just popped off. A lot of people had a lot of games that they wanted to to play that wasn't D&D and have already made the move or are planning on making the move. If they're not making the move, I mean, by and large, I think the smallest group of people that I saw on here said, no, we're sticking with Wizards of the Coast products, and we're going. I've got like maybe just a couple of people that responded with that nature. A lot of people that wanted to stick with D&D said, I'm not touching the new stuff. I'm staying with 5th edition. It's 5th edition and indie stuff. That's it. Indie modules for 5th edition. I'm not moving. And then a lot of people are playing Pathfinder, which, is the second kind of biggest thing right now, I think, in the space. Paizo is a big monster in terms of publishing. They do a lot of work, and their game is sort of modeled off of Dungeons and Dragons 3rd edition. And then they have, Pathfinder 2 and all of this other stuff. And then out of that, I saw a bunch of other, like, just random... I saw some class... Like, there's a bunch of Palladium guys out there. Palladium's still something people are loving.
I feel like Palladium's almost had, like, a little bit of a resurgence.
I think so, too. And that's really cool, because Palladium... I feel like Palladium gets forgotten in the conversation. I don't think it gets forgotten in the old school guys' hearts as much as it just gets forgotten in the conversation.
Yeah.
And it's got some cool stuff. Palladium mechanics, came out, in the 80s.
Yeah, it did.
And it's got some cool mechanics that you can't really get out of a lot of these other games. I love the D100 stuff that they throw in there. Some of their games, as we've talked about, was published in a little bit of a sloppy way, but this was the 80s. It was the Wild West back then. Nobody knew what the hell they were doing.
I really wish we'd get, like, a Palladium 2nd edition. You know what I mean? Where people, like, really went back and looked at Palladium and were like, this is a great base. Let's fill in the blanks, Like,
100%.
Like, so many things. Like, learning new skills, stuff like that just wasn't covered in the original game material. I would love that. Absolutely love that.
I would too. I mean, like the way that they utilize skills versus combat is different enough where it's almost two systems in your brain.
Yeah.
I think that it could use a little cleaning, a little polishing for more modern, systems. We've seen a lot of new systems come out that do certain things that for skills, for attack rolls, for all kinds of things that I think have brought new ways of playing a RPG a little bit more elevation and has made it a little bit more streamlined and faster. And I think having a fast roll is really key to getting your head out of numbers and onto a story.
Yeah, whenever I'm creating a game too, I tend to like try and streamline the rolling as much as I possibly can. I'm just weird that way. I want everything to be like when you're reading through it, I want everything to be like, oh, okay, I see what you did there. You know what I mean? Like kind of everything to come off the same system. With Palladium, I would switch the combat system, honestly. I'd completely rework the combat system, and I'd make it a D100 system, hands down, instead of the D20 thing. I think that, like, the whole game is kind of like, the whole system is, like, geared towards that D100 skill stuff, and then they drop it during the most important system there is, which is combat, to do, like, basically a D&D kind of copy. And I wish they just they just stuck to the D100 through the whole thing. I think it would just make more sense in and out. That was kind of a tiration and a digression. I think Palladium is a good backup for D&D. I don't play Pathfinder. I do want to say, before I get into my recommendations, I think that there is something to be said about just picking an edition you like and playing that. Like, if you're a D&D second ed guy, just play D&D second ed. Like who cares? Like that's your edition. The other thing about D&D is because they are such like a money marketing, sort of thing. They have all of their books over and over again in every edition. So like it's not like you're even gonna miss out on anything by I'm gonna stick with D&D third edition. Like you're gonna get probably most of the same books because they did it all with third edition, then they did it all with fourth edition, then they did it all with fifth edition.
Yeah.
So I feel like there's a monstrous manual for every one of those fucking things. So like I feel like if you don't like D&D fifth edition or you don't want to play D&D on D&D Beyond, switch to a different edition that you got the books for and stick with it. There's no reason you've got to like buy these new books or run out and get the 1.5 edition books. I mean,
Right.
in fairness, one of the things I don't like is they're trying to market this to people who are lifers by saying, "Oh, you get these pre-order bonuses and stuff." When really, a new set of books should be marketed to people who don't have any D&D books. Like that's where they should be going. Like that's what they're supposed to be made for. Is like here's a new collection of them that makes more sense out of what was already there, that's written better for people to understand easier when they're coming in. Like that's the idea of growing those editions. But yeah, so like there's nothing wrong with just playing D&D in a different edition or sticking with 5th edition, and just not contributing to this new onslaught of crap that Wizard of the Coast is trying to stick down your throat.
100%, 100% agree. And yeah, that was a really interesting point about like this not really necessarily being geared towards bringing in new players, but rather like nailing in the lifers and locking them in so tight. I mean, one other thing that's been really critical, we don't know exactly how all of this digital stuff's going to roll out because it's not out.
Right.
However, it's really set up there to lock people in so that their content is locked into D&D Beyond, a paid subscription service. And they can't take it out somewhere else. They can't take these skins out. They can't take all the money that they've invested in out and move it somewhere else. Or even take it home and play at their home table.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just travesty. I love playing online. I play online with you. I have an online D&D 5e game. I could not do this without playing at a table. I can't see this game. My life would not be fulfilled if I didn't have a table of people that I sat across and we all played at. And you can't do that with the way that the digital stuff is going.
I have to disagree slightly. This is going to be a point that we slightly differ on. I would much rather play all of my games from my computer. Like, especially now that everybody can see each other. Yeah, the idea of me playing in my pajama pants for 4 hours and then going right upstairs to bed and not having to drive home through my cop-infested Kent at 2 in the morning, who are just looking for any reason to pull my ass over. Like, I would, and also I'm tired and I don't want to drive home. I would love to play all my shit digitally. Like I just would. I'm 42 and I like comfort. So especially nowadays, like if you couldn't do it with visuals, I would agree with you. But I could do it with visuals, so I would rather just play it at my computer. But I understand where you're coming from, the digitalization. I think the digitalization comes primarily from actual plays in Critical Role because, you see that stuff getting used, and you want to use that stuff,
That's true.
If I'm making a recommendation, I want to throw out there White Box. I have a picture of it on the screen right now. I've never actually gotten to play this, but I've read it. It is a fantastic medieval adventure game. White Box, fantastic medieval adventure game. It is like a small-time independent thing. It tends to follow old school Dungeons and Dragons before the advanced kind of hit. It's a 140-page book, but that includes a monstrous manual inside of it. And it's nice. It's simple, easy rules to understand and play with. Rules that can easily be homebrewed too for once you start to get advanced, but it gives you the core essence of the Dungeons and Dragons experience. I would recommend that. I'd recommend that to most new players too, just because it's nice and easy to understand. You don't have to worry too much about the more complex math that comes with Dungeons and Dragons later on.
Yeah.
And then, of course, I'd recommend Single Mod. You can find that on Axiom Games LLC. Nice, easy system with a lot of fun build elements. Definitely not written by me. It was written by me.
In fact, Ordo Scriptorum, real horror game, if that's kind of your thing. I mean, we're shameless plug a little bit here.
Yeah, I was about to say, we're getting our plugs out of the way in the middle of the show.
But I mean, okay, so for me, like, it's a tricky thing to recommend various different types of games because it depends a little bit on who you are and what you want out of your RPG. Are you a brand new person? I'm gonna actually probably recommend something a little closer to Single Mod. It's an easier game to learn than something that's like 4,000 pages long, like a Dungeons and Dragons type game. Are you really into crunchy stuff? Like, is that your thing? You really like learning the rules. You're able to keep them all in your head. You like stacking numbers and playing with numbers a little bit. I mean, Pathfinder actually isn't a bad recommendation, honestly. If that's a little bit more your thing, it's much more streamlined than AD&D, and a lot of the OSR stuff can sometimes be. If I don't like THACO, that's really what it comes down to. I don't like the THACO.
Hey, THACO.
Yeah, ooh, it really
not
killed
a fan.
Me.
Not a fan of THACO either.
So, but like Pathfinder doesn't use it. I think that would be a fun system for more crunchier-ish people to lean towards. And it's not super crunch. It's not like you're playing like a strictly numbers game or anything like that.
Yeah.
If you're looking for something for your kids, I really do recommend if you have a younger crowd, the hero games. Oh shoot, what was there that?
Oh, I can't remember the name of the system. I will say this: if you are a D&D lifer who likes crunch, go find another crunchy game. Pathfinder's crunchy, or stick with D&D and pick a different, pick the edition you like the most. There are definitely crunchy games out there. I think Palladium's got a lot of crunch to it too, honestly, at the end of the day. I have never been a crunchy fellow. I like things to be very simple and direct and easy. So I can't, in good conscience, ever recommend White Wolf. But this is just so hard to read.
Even though you play it.
So hard to read! I do. I play in 2 different games. And some of my best role-playing is done in those games. It's so hard to understand. There's still at least every night, at least once, a debate about how something works. Like, just every night, because it's just so insanely weirdly written. I'd also recommend, if I may, oh crap, now it's not in my head anymore.
The one that wasn't in my head, I just double-checked it, was Hero Kids.
Yeah, Hero
Fantastic
Kids. Yeah.
For younger players. Very easy to jump into. If you're looking for something a little bit tougher, one of the big ones is going to be the Apocalypse system.
Powered by the Apocalypse. Yeah.
They have so many different games out there, too, that's a core rule system for that is invested or inserted. I think that's even what is powering, I could be wrong about this, but the Avatar, the television series that they turned into a RPG, I think Apocalypse is the one that's powering them. So anything that's powered by Apocalypse, it's a tougher system. It's a very strong, like, you gotta work a little hard. But if you really want to like have a game where you are doing like a lot of tough moves and tough decisions and really thinking things through, Apocalypse isn't bad. And I don't mean like it's challenging to learn when I say tough. I mean it's a little bit more like you're taking your challenge difficulty of okay, I'm not just gonna be able to cakewalk through this game. I gotta really like play. I'm gonna be a player.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, you got to. Yeah, you really gotta think about your moves there.
See some of the other. I'm looking at my giant list.
I mean, Fate's all about the RPing, So it's
Yes.
basically like rules for RPing, which is nice. Two Monsters Rolling Dice actual play podcast plays that, and you can check that out. I know they've been playing Fiasco lately, but if you go back, their core their core gaming was done in Fate, which was pretty good.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, there's plenty of
There's
games
so
to play
many.
out there. Yeah, just look for them. Just look for them, and try and find something that doesn't, that isn't icky.
Yeah. Yeah. And remember what it's really all about at the end of the day. It's playing a game. You know, we should all be approaching, I think, these games as exactly that. Playing a game with your friends, getting to know people, having fun, and telling stories. This is kind of, you're making a story with friends. It's a role playing game. So remember to put that first when you sit at these tables and you're finding a new game. Is this the type of story I want to be playing in?
Right,
You know,
right.
that's really what it comes down to.
Yeah.
Any last thoughts for the day, Zach?
No, no. I think we covered it all. Covered it all. Like I said, you check out everything I have to offer on Old Man Gaming on YouTube, or you can check us out at Axiom Games LLC. And maybe if you feel froggy, pick up a copy of Single Mod or Ordo Scriptorium, which comes with a copy of Single Mod for free. So, whatever your
And
poison is.
and always, all of these shows, can be found at wizardsrespite.com, along with more articles that kind of dive into this more industry news type of thing, and deep dive thoughts into the world of the hobby as opposed to just one game individually. Um, I guess then, for everybody out there that's listening, thank you for listening. Please enjoy this hobby. If you are new to this hobby, find a table that works for you, find a system that works for you. And until next time, everybody keep rolling them dice.